Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we are tackling that exhausting hamster wheel of feeling incredibly busy but making absolutely zero meaningful progress. I mean, we've all been there, right? You're running as fast as you physically can, juggling 1,000 different responsibilities, and yet at the end of the week, you look back and realize you haven't actually moved the needle in the things you truly care about. Well, today we're pulling from a really fascinating breakdown based on over a decade of coaching thousands of professionals. Let's unpack exactly how we can reclaim our time and actually achieve our goals completely without relying on that fleeting feeling of motivation.
So, let's start with the central dilemma here. How in the world can a busy professional possibly manage all these competing priorities without totally burning out? Think about it for a second. You're supposed to work a full-time job, constantly upskill and learn new things for your career, get a solid 8 hours of sleep, exercise, eat right, spend quality time with your family, and somehow still have a little bit of free time for your hobbies. Unless you've secretly invented a time machine, fitting all those pieces into a 24-hour day feels literally impossible. Most of us just look at that list and think, well, something has to give.
But the blunt truth here is that the secret isn't trying harder. It's shifting your entire mindset. The answer to that impossible balancing act is a resounding yes. But the catch is, you cannot do it by just gritting your teeth and pushing through. Thinking in systems is the absolute secret to regaining your control and your freedom. The fundamental goal here is to drastically reduce your reliance on willpower. We have to stop waiting for motivation to strike. Instead, we want to build automated processes that gently guide you toward your goals even on your absolute worst days.
To do that, we're going to explore 3 specific principles of systems. Principle 1 is thinking holistically, Principle 2 is building for repeatability, and Principle 3 is peeling the Band-Aids. Let's look at how these all work together.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the trap of good intentions and why rigid plans usually fail by day 3. Let's look at a problem pretty much all of us face, relying on intentions and rigid daily plans that absolutely demand our stars to perfectly align. The core conflict is that plans require constant daily injections of willpower, while systems are built to function even when you have nothing left in the tank. Let's break this down a bit. Most people operate purely on intentions. They tell themselves, I need to exercise today, or I need to study tonight. Or, if they're a bit more proactive, they turn that intention into a strict plan. I will study for exactly 1 hour at 7 p.m. right after work. Sounds awesome, right? But what happens on day 3 when you are just completely exhausted from a terrible day at the office? What happens when traffic is awful or a random emergency pops up? Your plan shatters. You haven't even started and you're just left feeling frustrated and disappointed in yourself. A system, on the other hand, proactively expects you to be tired, lazy, and for things to just generally go wrong. Moving right along to Section 2, which covers our first 2 principles, holistic thinking and building for repeatability. So the absolutely crucial point here is learning to seamlessly cycle back and forth between expecting failure and lowering friction. To move from the abstract to something tangible, let's consider an accountant who is constantly failing to execute his study plan simply because he didn't account for the reality of his tiring evenings. This guy was trying to study for his grueling chartered accountancy exams while working full-time. His big plan was to study every single day as soon as he got home. But let's look at his reality. He leaves work at 5 p.m., hits dense, soul-crushing traffic, gets home totally drained, immediately has to prepare dinner for his family, and by 8 p.m., his brain is complete mush. The common advice you'll hear is just dig deep, try harder. Who cares if you're tired? Just do it. But we know that relying on willpower like that isn't sustainable at all. And frankly, it's just a miserable way to live. So instead of using willpower to just try harder, we look for a low-effort solution to lower the friction of actually starting. If going home drains his energy, what if he completely alters the environment? What if he just stays at the office an extra hour? Think about it. He beats the rush hour traffic, he's already in a work-focused environment, and he gets his studying done way before the exhaustion of the commute even sets in. This is us building for repeatability by removing the high-friction event, that terrible commute, from the start of the study section. But because we're thinking holistically and we actually expect failure, we immediately have to identify the new barrier this creates. If he stays at work, he gets home an hour later. That means his entire family has to push their dinner back by an hour. Now, maybe that works. Maybe he has a quick conversation with his family, they are totally fine with it, and boom, we have a winning system. But what if they aren't? What if the kids really need to eat early? Well, we have to anticipate that obstacle. So we pivot. We rapidly bounce back and forth, exploring another option to completely bypass that evening exhaustion. If the evening is just too complicated, What about the morning? Could he wake up early and study before the rest of the house is even awake? By constantly evaluating the obstacles like this, we arrive at a combination of dynamic solutions that actually locks in our success. Now, if he studies in the morning, the immediate new obstacle is a lack of sleep. So, to solve that, he can't just sleep less. That totally violates holistic thinking. He has to change his nighttime routine so he can get to bed an hour or two earlier. Do you see what's happening here? We are treating this as a series of problems to solve. Just because your first solution isn't perfect doesn't mean there's no solution at all. You just have to keep bouncing back and forth until you find the exact right combination for your unique life.
Which brings us to section 3, the reality of discomfort, or choosing your hard. Now, changing your nighttime routine is undoubtedly uncomfortable, which highlights a major psychological hurdle in systems thinking. Let's really let this sink in. You are choosing between the temporary discomfort of changing habits or the chronic, stressful discomfort of never making progress. A lot of the time, the solution we arrive at through systems thinking feels a bit uncomfortable at first. Going to bed 2 hours earlier than you're used to? Yeah, that's tough. But getting a totally different result than what you're used to getting is the entire point. You have to realize that you are not choosing between an uncomfortable new habit and a perfectly comfortable life. If you don't make the change, you have to live with the anxiety, the pressure, and the heavy disappointment of failing to achieve the goals that actually matter to you. And that is infinitely more uncomfortable than simply going to bed a little earlier.
Okay, let's wrap this up with section 4, focusing on principle 3, peeling the band-aids.
Let's see how this final principle builds a system that literally evolves with you for the rest of your life. Initially, your system is probably going to be bloated with short-term fixes, but your goal is to eventually remove these limitations by solving the underlying root causes. Let's say your major obstacle is feeling too tired to focus. A really great systems-based solution right now might be taking a 20-minute nap during the day, and then using a strict countdown timer to force yourself to focus. And those are fantastic tools, but they are just band-aids. They help you right now without addressing the actual illness. The real reason you need a nap is poor sleep hygiene. And the real reason you need a timer is a fragile attention span. If you rely on the band-aids forever, your system remains totally vulnerable. I mean, what happens on a day you physically don't have time for a nap? The whole system collapses.
The very act of changing your underlying habits actually becomes a new goal, sending you right back through the first 2 principles to solidify your long-term success. So while you use the timer and the nap today just to survive, your new goal, your brand new intention, becomes fixing your sleep and training your focus. You take those massive habit changes and you run them through the exact same holistic, repeatable process we just talked about. It takes time, for sure, because you are literally unlearning years of bad habits. But by systematically peeling away those band-aids, you create a sleek, dynamic system that is incredibly easy to maintain long-term.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to ask yourself how redirecting that exact same amount of effort away from pure motivation and into building a dynamic system could finally give you your freedom back. Because creating these systems isn't necessarily more work. It requires the exact same amount of effort and often a lot less discomfort than brutally forcing yourself through rigid plans day after day. You are simply choosing a way smarter place to direct your energy. Take a really hard look at your current goals. Where are you relying on the stars perfectly aligning? Where are you demanding sheer perfection from yourself on your worst days? It's time to stop blaming yourself for a lack of motivation and start building a system that actually works for you.